Well, I've often wondered what these things are on the back of cars. They call them spoilers and wings and all sorts of other funny names, and I'm never quite sure what they're for, but I've, being the motoring expert that I am, I've just discovered what that design facility actually is. It's actually the tea tray for the old cuppa before the piece about the car. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Now, what a car. This car, well, if I could write a book about this car, you think it's the Lotus Elan. In fact, it's the Kia Elan. Although whether it's going to be called the Elan when it goes on sale in Britain, we're not quite too certain at this stage. Now let me give you a little bit of a history. About 3 years ago, I, little old me, went to Korea, spoke to lots of interesting people, came back to Britain, spoke to interesting people, went to Italy, spoke to some people, went back to Korea, spoke to some more people, and wrote a story saying that the Kia Elan would go on sale initially in Korea, eventually in the UK, for something like the price of a Mazda MX-5. In fact, I said it will be less than the price of an MX-5. Now, to say that the people of Lotus went ballistic when I suggested that the Lotus Elan would be built by an Asian car company in the Far East is an understatement. In fact, they were suggesting that I was making the story up, that it was complete fiction. Isn't it strange that, you know, we have two companies telling me that this venture is not going to happen, that this car is not going to go on sale in Korea or anywhere else in the world. And here we are in 1997 in good old Blighty, and we have with us a Kia Elan. And guess what? Guess what? And this is the good bit. The managing director of Kia UK, a man called Mark Quinn, told me only a couple of days ago that he's fighting like crazy to get this vehicle on sale in Britain, and guess what? It will undercut the Mazda MX-5. Rings a bell, doesn't it? I think it's fair to say that baseball caps are the most ridiculous invention ever, and coupled with my 1970s haircut, I think they look even more ridiculous. But the reason I'm wearing this cap and this Gore-Tex jacket is the fact that when you're in this car at speed, it's absolutely freezing. I don't know what it is about this car. Normally, of course, convertibles have a good heater. You switch the heater on, put it on full blast, and you snuggle in, and it's pretty comfortable. I was driving this car earlier today, and as you can see, it's a nice sunny day, and I was absolutely freezing. I was wearing sweatshirts and Gore-Tex jackets and gloves and hats and all the rest of it. Kia are not convertible manufacturers. They're manufacturers of humble saloon cars, cheap, inexpensive, bread and butter saloon cars, 4x4s and small hatchbacks like the little Kia Pride. This is a new area for them, and it shows in many respects, to be honest. Little things like the radio. It's possibly the worst radio in the history of car radios. I mean, it is awful. It's made by Alpine. It's an Alpine stroke Kia product. It's got both badges on, and it's crap. And the reason it's crap is that you cannot see anything on this display here. So is it a bit of sunlight on there? What does that, I mean, you know, I don't know if that's, what does that say? I mean, I'm supposed to be able to tell from that what wavelength I'm on, although I'm never quite sure what wavelength I'm on, what station I'm listening to, and you just can't read it. It's absurd. And every time you go to use this knob on the left here, sorry, I couldn't resist this. Every time you use this knob here to adjust the volume control, it seems that all you do is adjust the balance and the bass and the treble and the fader. It's an absolute nightmare of a car stereo, and whoever made it should be shot. Anyway, back to more serious matters. While we're on the interior of this car, I have to say these dials are a bit tacky as well. Is it really that cost effective or that essential for cost reasons, to cut down and have this horrible, cheap, barely see-through plastic here. Surely some higher grade plastic or even glass on those dials would give this car a much more upmarket feel. I mean, it's little cheap touches like that that ruin the interior of a car. This is quite nice though. We've got reading lamps here built into the actual rear view mirror itself, and that's a nice little touch. The problems with the Koreans is that they came on the car producing scene quite late in the day, and so they've got a lot of catching up to do. And although they can churn them out, and although they've copied a lot of the Japanese work practices and economies of scale, I think one of their problems is that they're not too hot in the quality control department, attention to detail. Lots of niggly little problems on this car that really do annoy you, and they're so unnecessary. I mean, look at this. We're talking about the gauge of the plastic. I mean, look, that's a bit like a cornflakes box, I think, and there's no need for it, and things like that cheapen it. I showed a neighbour of mine who drives a BMW, 2 BMWs in fact, not at the same time, but I showed, that's not indicative, by the way, of the speed of this car. We've just been overtaken by a scaffolder's van, but I can assure you that we could beat the bastard if we wanted to, but at the moment we don't want to because we're talking about this nice little car. But this neighbour of mine, who, like I said, has 2 BMWs, one for each foot, was really intrigued and actually came over to my house the other day, knocked on the door and said, what on earth is that? That's crazy. I thought that was a Lotus Elan. It says Kia. What's going on? He insisted that I put my carpet slippers, go out with my carpet slippers into the cold night air and talk him around the car. And the first thing he said was, what a cheap, tacky, horrible interior. Why can't they make the interior as attractive as the exterior? This is being pitched right up against one of the most famous cars from Japan, if not the most famous car from Japan at present, the Mazda MX-5. They want to undercut the MX-5. They want to put this Lotus Elan, or should I say Kia Elan, on sale for less than the price of a Mazda MX-5. And I'll tell you, if they do that, despite all the pitfalls with this car, despite the little quirky features and the cheap and tacky fixtures and fittings, which they can correct in time, they need a little bit of more experience, and they need to polish up their act a little bit more. They need to concentrate a little bit more on quality control. Despite all those problems with the interior of this car, it's actually quite well built. The hood fits nicely, and that's of course very important on a car like this. The body panels seem to be bolted together well. It's built in a state-of-the-art plant in a place I think called Bupyeong in the southern half of the peninsula of Korea. And those Korean workers are very willing and very able and very hungry, particularly to take on and beat the Japanese, like I said. Now, how enthusiastic am I about this car? Well, in view of the fact that it looks great, it turns an awful lot of heads, I'll tell you. I've been driving it around now for a few hundred miles, and I didn't think that anybody driving around in a Lotus Elan would really get people's attention, because they've been around for a few years and everybody's familiar with them. But I've been driving this car around, and this is effectively a Lotus Elan with a Kia badge, built by Kia, as I keep saying. But the number of heads I've turned in this car is amazing. I don't know if it's the Kia badge that's fooling them. I don't know if it's the P prefix on it which is fooling them, because people think that the Lotus Elan went out of production years ago. I don't know what it is. All I know is it turns a lot of heads, a lot more heads than a Mazda MX-5. It's a better car than a Mazda MX-5, and if this can undercut the Mazda MX-5, I kid you not, it won't just be the bargain of the year, it will be the bargain of the decade.